Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Kingdom Says. I am not Garrett, who is usually the host that does this introduction. I'm Kyle, usually in the co-host seat, and I'm joined by neither of my normal co-hosts at this exact moment. We might get one of them here soon, but I have a guest with us today. He's a very special guest, former Chief, current host of a Chiefs podcast, also Mr. Joe Valerio. Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Kyle. It's great to be with you again and regrouping from the last time we were together and, following Chiefs Kingdom and now we're at Super Bowl time. So it doesn't get any better than this, the culmination of the season. And here we are back again, 3 out of 5 years.
5 out of 5 in the title game, 3 out of 5 in the Super Bowl. It's a different time in Chiefs Kingdom than what a lot of us remember. And some of it, like me growing up, we didn't have any of these, and even for a lot of fans, it's a whole different era. And I think the thing that a lot of us have been talking about that have been around for as long has been appreciate this era of football, because it isn't always like this, guys. It doesn't always look like this. So from that perspective, what you watched Mahomes, not just Mahomes, because Chris Jones was an absolute destruction force on like 2 weeks ago now almost. But what you watched those two guys do kind of to cement their, I don't want to say cement their legacies because both of them were already pretty cemented, but that extra thing, that next thing to the ledger book for you in the list of achievements in games for them.
I mean, you mean as far as this season goes?
Yeah, well, just what they did on Sunday with Mahomes playing on basically 1 foot and Chris deciding that he needed to just Ender of Worlds that game from the perspective.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was a lot of pressure on them, right, to get back to the Super Bowl, and the fact that they had lost to the Bengals 3 times in the last 2 seasons, I think that was an added pressure that I was wondering whether or not it was going to they were going to fold under that, or whether or not they were going to use it to their advantage. And it obviously looks like they used it to their advantage, because they went into that game beat up, haggard, without their receiving core. Travis Kelce's, limping into the game. Patrick Mahomes is limping in the game. And if they're all healthy, and that's a healthy Chiefs team, maybe they beat the Bengals by 10, 2 touchdowns. I mean, so the fact that they went out and did what they did, as battered and bruised as they were, I think puts it in one of the best games that this team has probably played in if you wrap it up into one big package, probably one of the best games they've played in the last 5 years, right? Just when you take all the factors in, they won a Super Bowl, but when you take in all the factors of the injuries and everything that was going around, the distractions, because I think the Burrowhead stuff was actually more of a distraction than it really was a motivation. That just stuff just gets in the way. And that's why I'm glad that this Super Bowl, we're going into it with as few distractions as possible, right? I think the most controversial thing that's been said so far pre-Super Bowl has been Juju Smith-Schuster saying that Philadelphia doesn't have the best cheesesteaks. Like, that is the most, if that's the craziest bulletin board material that goes up, I mean, you're talking about, what's going to be an amazing Super Bowl being played by 2 great teams without all the nonsense and shenanigans that generally goes into these games. And I just think it's a sign of 2 respectful teams that really like each other, not like each other in the way that they don't want to beat each other, but they just have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. And that's what you want to see, right? That's what we want to see. I'm not a big fan of the nonsense,
I'm personally, as the fan side, as growing up, like I don't mind the rivalry stuff. Just as much as now it's not to the level of the Raiders, because that's a whole long history of hatred. But with the Bengals thing, with the amount of talking, with the amount of things, and the mayor and his weird video proclamation thing that went far beyond anything I've seen in trash talk and just became a weird its own thing.
Right.
Like, that's where it became for me, and I would assume for a lot of guys now, at least from today's players, that can become a motivation thing, because like that thing with the Burrowhead is one thing. The paternity test thing with the dad, that became
Right.
its own separate breed. And that's where, when you hear Mahomes even mention like the mayor was coming at me, man, like he heard that one, and like that one at least made some track record in his mind. He at least had the ability to bring that one up. So like
Right.
that's the kind of stuff where it's fun and all, but that a lot of that I agree is mostly for the fans. Most of
Yeah.
that stuff is for fans.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. I agree. I mean, that stuff is, you know,
Now
it's look, I love the rivalries. Don't get me wrong, pal. I love the rivalry that we had in the 90s with the Broncos and the Raiders and every AFC West team. And we were actually battling with the Bills a lot back then. I love the rivalries. It's just, it's the trash talking and the bulletin board stuff that comes back to bite you, because once it starts for one team, it goes to the other team too. And that's what my fear always is that it escalates to the point where it actually becomes detrimental to both squads, as opposed to what this Super Bowl is going to be going in, and what's going to be pretty much a clean pregame, right, so to speak. I mean, there's going to be
they
nobody
tried.
snot.
They tried to
What's
get him to. They tried to bait Brandon Graham and Mahomes both into saying something about the other one, and neither one of them would give an inch without giving the other one the biggest amount of paid respect, compliment, flowers they could. Neither one of
yeah,
them was going near it.
yeah, you gotta love that part of it, right? You gotta love that the players were really smart enough to really see through all of it, and they just want to go out and play a really good game. And it's part of me says maybe they want to do it for the Kelseys too, right? Maybe they want to make sure that the Kelseys are going into this game with their kind of the best mojo, right, so to speak.
There's
That's
no awkward
how
tension amongst them because you got teammates of each other arguing with each other on Twitter or whatever. Or
exactly.
And the other part I think that factors into that you're right on is I think Andy probably has a big factor in it, because he still holds a tremendous amount of respect for that organization over there in his own
Oh,
right.
totally,
Some
totally.
people may think he shouldn't and doesn't need to. That's also not your decision or your call to make, and he clearly does hold that respect for them. So I would be surprised if the memo wasn't do not, the same as it was with the Bengals, which the biggest thing that the Chiefs said to the Bengals was Willie Gay said nothing. And I mean, he literally said the word nothing was his
Right.
response that drew
Right.
everybody's ire.
Right.
So
Right.
from that perspective, though, I know that it's usually not a big thing for the players. What is it to you that the quarterback seems to absolutely go dig up this stuff and find one or two of those little chip things and then thrive off of it and eat, and he seems to do that Michael Jordan, I will find anything to take personally mentality type thing.
Yeah, you mean talking about Patrick?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's some players like that, right? They like playing with that chip on their shoulder, and they want to kind of, they want to they want to go into the game with some extra motivation, right? These guys are, they're at the top of their game, so they're always looking for something, right? That's going to be a little bit of an extra motivation, and I think that's, that's what drives Patrick sometimes. He wants to have that because look, he's done it all, right? He's probably going to win the league MVP for the regular season. He's if the Chiefs win this game, he's probably going to win the Super Bowl MVP, short of
Chris
Jerick
Jones.
McKinnon, or Chris Jones getting like 5 sacks, or Jerick McKinnon rushing for like 4 touchdowns and 150 yards, right? So even if Travis goes off, it's going to be because of Patrick. So Patrick will probably get the MVP if even if Travis has the game of his life, or any of the receivers. So I think sometimes players need a little bit of that extra motivation when they've been there, done that, hoisted the Super Bowl trophy, had an MVP, had a career so far like he's had, that hey, it's kind of fun to have a little something to go off of. There's a lot of memes of Patrick out there doing the what, like what, like he that one of my favorites is what was it, I'm here, I'm here, I'm
Oh
here,
yeah,
I'm here,
he was yelling,
so
"I'm here" at Max Crosby from the sideline. Yep.
hey, listen, I love the fiery quarterback. I think it's great, and I love that that he gets in there and he's doing what he's doing. How much respect is he gaining, not only from the fan base but also from his teammates, for playing with what is usually an injury that, somebody could be in a boot for 4 or 6 weeks and not even, see the light of day of the field. So it's pretty special, right? What he's
Yeah.
doing. And,
To that level on that injury thing, you watched Tony Pollard break his leg on almost an exact same play of that, just a little farther down the field, and in that same method. And now, obviously, Patrick didn't break his leg, which is good, but that high ankle sprain, as you mentioned, did you ever end up with one during your career?
I never had a high ankle sprain.
Okay.
I've rolled my ankles, but I know that they
Because I
are
have had
brutal.
every single guy that I have watched that's played in this league that has had a high ankle sprain is like, I don't understand how he's doing what he's doing, because
Right,
they're awful.
right, right.
So
It's crazy, right? That he's actually doing that. So, yeah, it's nuts, right? So
with
I think, yeah, it's Herculean what he's doing right now.
with that extra motivation conversation with some guys, how much of a factor do you think, or would, with some of the guys that you played with in this organization prior, would a game like what happened last year for Chris in the AFC title game and that motivation for this year's AFC title game? Because to him, and from everything he said, that was basically his focal point. Get back to here, see this team, get my redemption, get this team's redemption, fix this problem. And he seems to have used that as the fixation for most of the season. So how, as a player, does that become, where do you try to find that balance as a player? Because I know there's an unhealthy balance in either way. If you go too
Yeah,
far, it becomes an obsession that it eats you up, and you overtrain and you overfocus and you miss everything else and you lose all that before this, and it never gets there.
yeah, and you don't want to like play out of yourself, right? You don't want to overplay. You don't want to be the guy that, tries too hard, and at the end of the day, you're kind of like you're left out there just looking like, man, I put all this huff and puff into this game, and I didn't turn it up, right? I mean, you have a role to play too. I mean, people don't realize sometimes, even in a position like Chris Jones, where you can get some fanfare, right? It's a little different than playing offensive line. You basically, when you're playing offensive line, you kind of, you don't want your name in the paper, right? Because it means you did something, you jumped off sides, or you had a holding call at the wrong time. But I think at a Chris Jones position, there's some very disciplined things that he's going to have to do in this game and he's had to do in other games where you also don't want your name in the paper because you've got a role to play, right? And I think one of the things fans might not know about this, since they haven't really seen a team run the RPO the way that the Eagles do. I mean, it's a true run pass option offense. And when I was coaching high school football, coached for about 11 years, and we ran the triple option. And I know how hard it is to defend because we would play against players who were way bigger than we were. And somebody would say, how are you going to block number 96? He's huge. I would say, we're not going to block number 96. That's how we're going to block him, because you make them make choices, right? And you make them make decisions about what they're going to do, whether they're going to tackle the dive play, the running back, go after the quarterback. When the quarterback pulls the ball, then they think that they're gonna tackle the running back, and then all of a sudden the quarterback pulls the ball and throws it. Like, it's tough. It takes a lot of discipline. So if I'm Chris Jones, maybe his role this week is to be the disciplined defensive tackle he needs to be, and not try to make a sack, because Jalen Hurts is the kind of quarterback that you don't want to go after him with like a pure sack, right? You want to get in his face and not give him any lanes to win with his feet, because that's where he'll kill you. So you want to make sure your rush is disciplined and you're getting in his face, you're getting your hands up to block balls as he's trying to throw over top of you. That's the way the Chiefs are going to win this game, with disciplined defense, not a pin your ears back and just go after him and do whatever you can. These quarterbacks today, the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, the Jalen Hurtses of the world, they thrive on being overrushed, because they'll pick you apart with their legs. They'll find the open spot in the pocket. They'll step up. they'll run the RPO, and next thing you know, you're left there just holding the bag, while Jalen's running down the field or stepping up in the pocket and finding an extra receiver. It's not like the old statuesque quarterbacks of old, like John Elway and Dan Marino, guys just sitting back there pumping the ball 7 yards deep, and you try to build a parabola or like a half of an oval around them in a pocket. That's not the way it works anymore with these kind of mobile quarterbacks. So anyway, I know it's a long answer. I went on a diatribe about it, but I think Chris Jones, he may not get the MVP, but the Chiefs still may win defensively handily because of what he does in playing his role.
Yeah. For those of you who are watching us on YouTube, you saw our friend and my co-host Arrowhead Tom join us in the middle of Joe's answer there. So, yeah. Tom, how are you this evening, sir?
Oh, I tell you what, I apologize for being late, fellas, but there's nothing better than coming on and hearing our friend Joe talk about offensive and defensive line play. So that's what I was rushing back to get up here to talk about the big boys. I couldn't miss out on that. So, and this is a good matchup, Eagles and Chiefs.
We just talked a little bit about Chris from last game and towards this game, but I did want to touch more on that defensive side. Chris is a big factor in this game, but I think you mentioned the good thing about that they're probably going to try to use him in that read option as the pitch point, as the decider. So, Joe, from that thought process, Dana and Clark, especially Frank, with just what he's done in the postseason alone is kind of insane. But with him this week, I think those edge defenders become even more important. And Frank's always been so solid at setting that edge. What kind of role, when you play that against that read option, do those two edge defenders have when they're not being used as the pitch man or the read portion of that read option?
Well, if they're not being, if they're not the option guy, we used to call it, right? The guy that you're looking to option, they've got to be disciplined, right? They have to shed their blocks and play it like they're playing any other run play or rush play. The problem is in something in the RPO, it slows you down just enough. It slows you down as a rusher just enough that if you see the quarterback looking like he's going to hand that ball off to a running back, then all of a sudden he pulls it and he steps back to pass. Then you've got to get your momentum started again, right? So they're not only watching the guys that are being the option guy, right, that you're not blocking. They're also doing it to slow down the rush. And then what happens is then you start over pursuing, right? And you think, oh, well, they're running it this time, so I'm going to dive in there and tackle the guy who's running the ball. Next thing you know, Jalen Hurts pulls the ball and he's got nobody rushing him, and he's got 5 seconds to throw the ball. And then all of a sudden you think, well, no, this time I'm rushing him. I'm going to, he's definitely not going to pull it this time because Jalen's hurt and his shoulder's hurt, and he's going to pull the ball, or he's going to hand it off. And then, next thing you know, he hands it off and you're rushing the quarterback like with reckless abandon. And you saw, if you watch the Eagles 49ers game, prior to the Chiefs game, they gashed the Niners on some RPO. I mean, long runs, like no one even like touched Miles Sanders. And I think Kenneth Gainwell had one of those, or maybe Boston Scott. Is like, holy, like, wait a minute, was there a defense out there? Like, what the heck just happened? So that's that's what they're going to try to do. And so here's what the Chiefs need to do this week, and what they've needed to be doing all week. Those guys needed to be repping Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, and AJ Brown. They needed to have the right pennies on the right guys, and they need some muscle memory, because the Chiefs haven't seen anything like this all year. And it takes muscle memory to stop the option. You can't just watch it on film and say, oh, well, when he does this, like, there's no tells. Like, you can't just say, oh, when he does this, he's going to pull it and throw, or he's going to pull it and run. And you've got to muscle memory that into your system and get out and rep it. Like Marty used to say to us, Coach Schottenheimer used to say all the time, give him a look, boys, give him a look. And that meant really emulate the team. When we were running scout, really emulate the player that you were supposed to be and give them a look, so that when they get out on the field on Sunday, the defense has a natural, reaction to what's coming at them, rather than being blindsided by it. So it's a lot of chess game that's going to be going on with the preparation for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot about gap discipline, even on the second level, right? Because that's where, if your defensive line, really, if they make the wrong call, right, they're probably they're going to pick up positive yardage, and then you want your linebackers to read that correctly too, and so it really is, like you said, it's not so you could watch it on film till you're blue in the face, but till you're in that exact moment and you gotta make that decision, it's a lot harder than just watching it on film and going, oh yeah, you pick, this is the option.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, pretty interesting matchup. It's all, I think this rests squarely on the shoulders of the defense for both teams in stopping a unique offense to both, because the Chiefs haven't seen the defense, and the defense and the Eagles haven't seen the Chiefs, someone like the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes at the helm all year. This is going to be a mysterious game for these two defenses. And then obviously on the other side of the ball, because these teams are so evenly matched, I think in most areas, they're very similar in a lot of areas, a lot of parallels between their diverse receiving core. They got running backs that are, very kind of scat backies. There's no Derrick Henrys or Christian Okoye's back there that are going to maul you. They've got defenses that are very similar, offensive lines that I think are the two best offensive lines in the NFL. Up and down, it's all the same except for the offensive philosophy of each, and then what the quarterback's going to be able to do to execute. So it really comes down to the way the entire defenses play, and also the way the quarterback plays. So,
and they're both
quarterbacks being dinged, right, Tom?
Yeah, they're both dinged up, and I'm gonna steal the next question just to jump to the other side, because we talked about this the last episode. In terms of the Chiefs' offensive line, like you said, these are probably the two best lines, two best offenses, but two of the best offensive lines in the league. The Eagles, they've only played. I did the math for the last episode. They've only played 3 teams this season that finished in the top 10, in pass block win percentage. Within their division, they had 3 other teams that were in the bottom 5, and they had a lot of those. So how do you think, especially because I know you've got a little, you're invested in both teams here. How do you think that Philly pass rush is going to match up with the Chiefs offensive line? Because I don't think they've seen an offensive line this good all year.
No, definitely not. No, there's a lot, like I said, of mystery going into this game for both sides of the ball, not seeing similar type positions on the other side. Here's what I would say. The Chiefs have got to do a good job on their single blocks, right? So Andrew Wiley is probably going to be the one that Hassan Reddick rushes one-on-one most of the game if the Eagles can get the pass protection to set to Creed Humphrey's left, right? So watch Creed Humphrey in the game, watch where he points, watch where Patrick points the center, because what they're doing is they're declaring the strength of the rush, and they're saying, okay, Creed, you go left, right? If you're uncovered, if they had a basic 4-man front, and they'll declare one of the linebackers, to the left, or the strong safety, or somebody who looks like they're blitzing to the left. So you get a 3-on-2 matchup to start, and then you have the extra lineman in case somebody blitzes. And then the other side would be the hot side for Patrick, right? If somebody comes off of that side, he knows the center's going left. I've got to take the blitz to the right, and then I've got 2 one-on-one blocks between a DT and a D end. So that is what fans need to watch for. How many times can the Eagles get the matchup that they want singled up? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, just if I were to watch film game after game, I'd have to say that they're going to try to get their best pass rusher on Andrew Wiley, because he's probably the one that has, it's not that he's struggled, but he's struggled the most of any of the offensive linemen when it comes to pass protection. So that's what I think the Eagles are going to try to do. They're going to try to get the Chiefs to set the protection away from guys like Hassan Reddick, who's a fantastic pass rusher. I mean, there's four of the Eagles, I think defensive linemen or pass rushers have double-digit sacks. So, it's really not a weak link on the defensive front for the Eagles, but I think they're going to try to get their best matchups on those one-on-one sides. So, as soon as you see Creed Humphrey declare a side, watch the opposite side and see what happens with those one-on-one matchups.
Yeah, and their defensive line is stacked. We talked about that last episode too, and then you can kind of mix and match. So definitely gonna have to pay attention to Creed and Patrick and how they set the protections, just on the different looks that they're going to get. Again, a unique matchup there, because I think you can make the same argument, say, yeah, the Eagles haven't seen a line like the Chiefs, but I don't think the Chiefs have seen a defensive line like the Eagles. So,
all right. Well, we have used all of Joe's time here, so we are going to go ahead and get on out of here. Joe's got his connections to both sides of this matchup, as we briefly discussed there. Joe's got Philly roots with some Chiefs background. So, you guys, if you missed it on our first time we had Joe on, we did talk a whole bunch about his Philly background and where he's from and whatnot. So if you want to jump into that, check that out. Please make sure to go watch the recap episode, not the recap episode, the preview episode we did with Country earlier this week, the contest update, and the artist check-in with Corey we did earlier today, which you won't be seeing this until tomorrow, but it's today right now. So on Wednesday when it came out. And definitely follow us on all of our socials. Go check out Joe's podcast, Believe in Chiefs, over on the Believe Network. And follow Joe at his handle, which if you're on YouTube, which if you aren't on YouTube and you're listening on a podcast, please go over to the YouTube page, like, subscribe, help us out there. Also, like, subscribe, and leave us a review on all the podcast pages. And we will happily get you guys some more content. Stay tuned. There may be a Spaces this weekend in prep of the big game as well. So with that, Arrowhead Tom, do you have anything else you want to give to the folks before we get ready for Patrick and company to try to bring home another Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, just want, like I said, I know I got here late. Just want to give another shout out to Joe. Always great to have him on. Great friend of the pod, great mind. Love hearing him talk about the trenches, and I think everything he said today was so spot on, and I think I learned just every time he talks. So make sure you're following him. If you're a Chiefs fan, consider him a must follow. So again, that's at Joe Valerio, Valerio 73 on Twitter, and that he's got his links to his other socials on there. So again, shout out to Joe. Thanks for being there. Man, this is going to be an exciting matchup. So looking forward to talking about, again, we've got lots of guests, and make sure you stay tuned this week and even after, because it's almost draft season. I mean, it's been draft season. It's almost the season where Kyle lets me talk about the draft. Almost.
You're right. It's almost, but we're not quite there yet. And you're getting your whole own set of segments and time to talk about that and some more fun stuff coming out for you guys on that front. So stay tuned there. But with that said, follow the Kingdom Says Pod. That's the handle on basically all the socials. Follow myself, Caden16. Follow the invisible Garrett720, who is not here currently. Follow Arrowhead Tom. And we'll see you guys next time.